Hey guys, Sid from Sid's Trains here, and welcome to episode 3 of my Lionel Legendary Hudson series. In this episode, we're going to be taking a look at the Lionel Vision Line New York Central 700E Hudson. So it has been a really long time since I did a video for this series on the channel. The first episode was on the remake of the 700E from 1990. The second episode was on the New York Central Commodore Vanderbilt that Lionel made in 1996. And then in episode 3, which is now, we are checking out this Vision Line remake of the 700E. This is probably the most legendary and most well-known Hudson that Lionel's made within the last, say, 20 years. That seems like a really long time period, but Lionel really hasn't made very many scale Hudsons over this time period. And while there has been others that might be more different or more obscure, this one is probably the most well known, and in my opinion is the most well known because of Eric Siegel's review that he did basically 10 years ago when this engine came out around 2010. And because of that, I'm not doing a review on this engine. I'm just talking about some of the features, why it means so much to the hobby, and what it means to me. So why is this engine so legendary? This engine is legendary, at least in my opinion, because it's a remake of the 700E. If you don't know already, the 700E was a die-cast scale model of a J1E Hudson that Lionel made in 1937 and then made in 38, 39, and then possibly 40. There's some controversy over the years. Some believe the 40s were just leftovers from past years, but that's for a different video and just a totally different topic. But back to this engine. This is a remake of that engine. That engine is what put Lionel on the scale model making spectrum and put him on the market. Obviously, that was a long time ago, and many things have changed since then. However, ever since they made that engine, Lionel's line has always been die-cast steam engines. Obviously, they've also introduced diesels that are sometimes die-cast, but usually plastic, but still detailed and scale-oriented. During the post-war era, most trains weren't scale, but they were trying to represent real trains, not be toy trains. They were trying to be models of the real trains. And that's why the steam engines were black with the detailing and all the piping. They weren't tin plate and green or blue with nickel trim and silver trim. They were trying to be as accurate as possible. But of course, Lionel had to keep the cost down so they couldn't be scale models. But as time went on, we went through the MPC era where it was just remakes of post-war stuff. Then we entered the 80s, the late 80s, where they started bringing back some bigger steam engines. And then comes the 90s. The 90s was the 90s were probably the best time for scale model making companies, especially Lionel, and then with the introduction of MTH, and then all of these other brass companies like Williams and Third Rail and Right of Way Industries, all these companies were making scale models. They were trying to be as realistic as possible and trying to appeal to what is now a high railer or a 3-rail scale modeler. And none of that would have ever happened in the 3-rail market if it wasn't for the 700E Hudson. So, as you can tell from that little story, the 700E means a lot to the 3-rail O-scale market. And because this is a remake of it, that's why this is so legendary. But it's not just the fact that it's a remake. It's a remake with modern twists on it, and it's a Vision line. Vision line is really what made this engine stand out from all the other Hudsons that were being made before it, and of course after it. This engine is a Vision line engine. The Vision line is a line from Lionel that is pushing the limits, adding tons of features, make them as realistic as possible. And this engine kind of did two things at once. It pushed the limits while retaining some of the details that actually aren't super accurate, but were from the original 700E Hudson. And I'm going to talk about those features here in a second. But that's kind of the general idea behind why this is so legendary. And I'm also going to get into the idea behind why it's so legendary and special to me. So before I talk about the features and the details of this engine that really make it stand out as a Vision line engine, I want to talk about what this engine really means to me. When this engine came out, I was 8 years old. I was super young. I did not have the collection I do now, and my layout was super small, but I was just obsessed with Hudsons. I thought they were awesome. All the old TM book videos talked about how the Hudson was so special and it was so powerful, and how it was just this like almost perfect steam engine. And because of that, I was just obsessed with them. I thought they were awesome, and I really wanted one. And there came a time where I would get one. It was a Williams by Bachmann diecast 773 style Hudson, and I love the thing. Sadly, it fell off a table years ago, and since then I just haven't touched it. But that's not really, I'm not upset about that. I have so many trains now that can take its place, and obviously at the time I was sad, but that's a whole nother story. But I was just really obsessed with Hudsons, and the first time I ever saw this engine was Eric Siegel's review of it, and I was just blown away. First of all, this is a scale model. It's not a 773 like I said before. This is a scale model. It has all the details of a real J1E Hudson. Obviously, this being a 700E, there's some details that aren't completely accurate to the real one, such as the window frames and some of the builder's plates and a couple other things. But it's really a scale model, and I see it and I'm like, wow, that is the coolest thing ever. And what blows me away even more is the fact that it has some amazing features. It has probably one of the best features Lionel has ever created, being the whistle steam smoke effect. And then it also has probably a feature I would buy any engine that has this feature, and I probably will in the future buy more engines with this feature. That is the swinging bell. If you turn on the bell in this engine, the bell swings back and forth, which is just awesome. It adds this whole nother level of realism and play value in a way. It's so cool to just see the engine running along and the bell swinging. Like, you don't expect that from a model, and it's just awesome. And being an 8-year old, I was like, how the heck does that work? That is so cool. And moving on to something that's kind of related to how things work, this engine not only was revolutionary in the fact that it's a Vision line engine and it's a remake of a Legend, it was also one of the first engines to have some new electronics in it or around the time it came out, it had new electronics. The electronics in it now are kind of old in a sense. Pretty much any legacy engine from 2010 to now has these boards that are inside of it, but at the time it was very revolutionary. And what it has is the RCMC main motherboard inside the engine, and then the tender has RailSound 6. That combination, in my opinion, is probably one of the best combinations Lionel ever had. The reason behind that is because it's more modern electronics in the engine, but the sound system is still old school. It has the road-specific dialogue. It has tons of great steam sounds, chuffing. and the whistle and bell are just fantastic. But then you move to the engine side, and then you have the ability for all these features in one board. You have the swinging bell, stack steam, whistle steam, all the lighting effects, and it's very compact, which allows for more features to be crammed into a small engine. And they really did cram this engine full of features. And obviously now I do repairs, I work on trains, and I'm going to be going into engineering in college. And I just like the whole design of this engine, and that's another reason why I wanted it more and more as I got older, is because I understood the design of it, I understood the features and how they worked, and I just love looking at that. And really, that is why I love this engine. It is just, it just goes above and beyond what you would expect for a Hudson. While a Hudson is a large locomotive, it is not as big as, say, a Northern or a Texas. And then, of course, there's articulateds, big boys, Yellowstones, Class A's, Challengers. And for such a small engine, it goes above and beyond. And when I was 8, I saw this engine, and ever since then, I've wanted it. And just recently, I had the opportunity to purchase this engine, and I just could not say no. So now I own this engine, and that's really why this engine means so much to me. So now let's move on to some of the features I've talked about already, but we can take a closer look at them. So before we check out the features on this engine, the whistle steam, the swinging bell, the sounds, and the lighting, and then of course run it around for a little, I'm going to talk about a couple of the features I've said are not accurate to a real J1E Hudson, starting with the builder's plates on the side. Builder's plates are plates that go on the side of engines that tell people who it was made by, what kind of engine it is, and usually when it was made. And they usually are right here. And you can see there's these two little plates here, but they don't really say anything on them. Just the one says Lionel lines are built by Lionel, and that's not super accurate, but the original 700E had it, so Lionel kept that on this engine to kind of keep true to the original tooling of the engine, because this is a 700E, not a scale, super detailed J1E. So the other main detail that this engine has that a real 700E wouldn't have had is this window design. Here's a picture of a K-line J1E Hudson, which is a super detailed, accurate representation of a J1E Hudson. As you can see, it's a little different. It doesn't have the extra bar here in the back, and instead just has the windows here and then a sliding insert for the back of the window. And this model is a 700E, so it is representing what the original one looked like, and because the original one had this design, that is why this engine has this kind of window instead of what a real J1E would have had. One more thing with the details on this engine, the original 700E did not have a backup light, but this engine does. Being a remake that has the modern features, Lionel probably just wanted to add that since it's nice having a backup light on the engine. So that's about all I have with the detailing on this engine and just the story behind why it's so legendary and what it really means to me. So now we're going to run it around for a little and check out some of the features on it. But as always, like, subscribe, and click the bell for notifications. Comment below and tell others about the channel. I'm Sid, and I'll see you next time, guys.
New York Central, 5344. Do you copy? Over. Roger that. 5344 here. I read you. Over. Please start up and stand by for track orders. Copy that. Out. New York Central 5344. You're cleared onto the main. Over. We got your signal. 5344 out.